Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you to the committee members, subcommittee members that are here. Appreciate y'all being here after the session's over, and on a Friday too. Let's start out. I'd like to ask Representative Gamble if he'd open us with prayer.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to consider the business of our state. Father, I pray that you would be with us during this time. Keep us safe this weekend. Be with all of our families. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, Representative Gamble. Okay, this morning we're going to start out. We got Representative Chairlady Katie Dempsey. There she is. I ask you to come on up front. This is going to be a hearing only on substitute HB 654. And you may have somebody that you want to bring up now. If you want to talk a little bit and then ask your experts to come up, that's fine too. All right, you're on. Thank you, Representative Dempsey. Chair Lady.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, members of the committee. I bring to you today 654. Let's make sure you have the right LC number as well. It's 44263S. So we worked on this for a little while, starting last year. And in 2019, the legislature passed an important measure that was long overdue for counties to cover some of their costs in hosting landfills. However, like a lot of bills passed down here, as time goes on, there are unintended consequences that arise from very good ideas. In time, some things affect certain industries more than others. As I visited recycling facilities over the last year, I came to understand how very important the recycling industry is in our state and why there is compelling reason for this legislation to give relief to these specific businesses. This bill simply lowers the fee back to the 2019 amount of $1 per ton for auto shredder residue. Only for auto shredder and heavy household appliance residue. There are certain industries remaining today at the $1 surcharge fee in Georgia law, including construction and demolition waste, as well as inert waste. While these fees are important for local governments, the fee increase to $2.50 has had detrimental effects on the recycling industry in Georgia. I do have representatives here to discuss their industry and how this fee has affected their private business. If there are questions after that, would you prefer I wait and do that after they speak, if we need to do that?
Yes, ma'am, that'd be better.
I will stay close and ask them to come forward now.
Very good, yep. You can both come up, and there's an extra chair there too if you need it, Chair Lady. And if y'all would just state your name and who you're with, that'd be great too.
Good morning, everybody. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Representative Dempsey, thank you very much for bringing this important measure forward. My name is Brian Hudson, and I have a lobbying firm, the Hudson Group. One of my clients is the Georgia Recyclers Association. The Georgia Recyclers Association is the main association in Georgia for metal recyclers and other recyclers, paper, et cetera. And so we, just to give you a quick snapshot of who kind of the impact the recyclers have in Georgia, overall economic impact for the recycling industry is $3.2 billion. There's over 14,000 jobs associated with the recycling industry, and total state taxes paid last year were $267 million. And this is a pretty staggering number here for everybody to hear, I think. Georgia Recyclers recycled 4 million metric tons in 2022. It's pretty substantial. Obviously, we play an important role in the life cycle of a variety of different products through the recycling process. The state of Georgia has 9 shredders across the state. There's actually more that are coming, and I think Bobby's going to talk about that in a minute. And I'll just say this: recycling automobiles and appliances is absolutely critical for keeping our environment healthy and vibrant. We believe only about 3% of the total waste going into the landfills is this shredder residue. And as Representative Dempsey said, the fee increase in 2019 has had a very negative impact on the industry. These are mostly small businesses across the state. We have a few larger recyclers, but overall, most of them are small businesses owned by families, et cetera. And so just wanted to kind of give you a snapshot there, and I appreciate having me today. And I'll introduce Bobby Triss with SA Recycling, and he is definitely the expert. I am certainly not, but I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, committee members, Representative Dempsey. Thank you for allowing me to be here today. My name is Bobby Trish. I am the Regional General Manager for SA Recycling, which is a large company. I've been in this business my whole life because it started out as a family business. My grandfather started the company back in the 1930s. I was the past president of our trade association here last year, so I'm the past president right now. I was president last year. My grandfather, besides being in this business, he invented and patented the automobile shredder back in 1969. He grew up very poor, and the way they used to tear apart old cars back in the day was just industry practice used to be they'd put diesel on a car and they'd light it on fire to burn off all the non-metallics. And then he would chop up the car with an axe or a sledgehammer and a torch into pieces about this big. When he was a little boy in California, he saw some sort of little hammer mill that was used in the agriculture business, and he said, if I could make a hammer mill big enough for a car, I could get a lot more done every day. And so he started tinkering around with it in the 60s, and he ended up coming up with a machine. The first one certainly didn't do a whole car. It did fenders and hoods and things like that. But he ended up perfecting it, and it ended up being able to shred a car. It was a tremendous invention. He patented it in 1969. It was named by the ASME, the 111th National Historic Mechanical Engineering Landmark. It's that important. It's used throughout the world, not just our country. You can go to China or Russia or anywhere, and that's the way end-of-life items like cars and appliances get recycled. You have to, when you have something like a car that's made up of steel and aluminum and rubber and plastic and tires and glass and insulation, you have to recycle it. You have to pulverize it so that you can separate the dissimilar materials. So the shredder and the ones we use today can shred a car in about 15 seconds. It's powered by a 6,000 horsepower electric motor. The rotor weighs 135,000 pounds. It goes 450 RPM. You have 680-pound hammers that travel about 160 miles an hour. A car stands no chance. It goes through there, gets pulverized, it comes out of the shredder pulverized, and then you separate the steel with magnets from the non-steel. And in the non-steel, you still have non-ferrous aluminum, or non-ferrous metals like aluminum and copper and brass. I brought along a sample of the shredder residue that we're talking about. It's a homogeneous material you got rubber and foam and tires and insulation materials, and this is what shredder residue is. Every car is about 30 or 35% non-metal between the plastic and the insulation and the tires and the glass and the rubber. So we recycle millions and millions of tons as an industry, but there's still a portion that has to go to landfill, and it's a cost for us. And if we stopped recycling, if there wasn't a shredder and if we stopped recycling cars because our costs got too expensive, maybe cars wouldn't end up on the side of the streets, but things like washing machines and refrigerators and water heaters would. And you even see some of this happening in very far out rural areas around the country, not necessarily here in Georgia, but it has to be economically viable to recycle those types of things. I-beams and pipes, those are easy to recycle. They don't require shredding. They can go right back to a steel mill. It's the complex, multiple material items like a appliance or a car that has to be shredded. And we've done this our whole lives. Like I said, my grandfather didn't get into it to save the world. He was trying to eat, trying to survive. And it just happened to also be a job that had significance in helping the world. And so very, very proud of him. You know, this, we didn't have this on our radar screen when this tax happened in 2019. It didn't come on any of our desks, or we would have been down here asking for attention to it then. But because it came up under a waste heading, it didn't get on our radar screen, or we would have been down here asking for help back then. This costs our industry here in Georgia about $1 million a year. So there's about 630,000 tons of this that goes to landfills in Georgia. We're the biggest. We have 3 shredders here in Georgia, and they're bigger shredders. Like Brian said, there's 6 other shredders. Some of them are smaller, and there's some little ones coming in. I just heard yesterday another one's happening down in Locust Grove, smaller shredder. But we're certainly the biggest company, so it affects us the most. And that money, if we had it back, we could use it for more employee. You know, we all know how costs have gone up. Inflation has been crazy these last few years. People, supplies, materials, everything has gone up. So it would help us. It costs us a lot of money, and it would help us to continue to do the right thing. Thank you for your time. If I can answer any questions for you, I'm happy to.
Okay, we do have a couple of questions, and when I recognize, you can direct your question to whomever you'd like. Chairman Dickey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate y'all bringing this bill, and I appreciate the time yesterday talking. I've just got a couple more questions. So this material does not break down. It's kind of almost inert, really. It's not going to decompose. Does it have to go to a line landfill, or
Yes, sir.
Who requires that? EPD?
EPA requires shredder residue to go to line landfills.
Line landfills, yes, okay. So this fee that we want to roll back is in addition to the normal tipping fee that the county or city would normally charge, or the private landfill would normally charge.
Yes,
is
sir.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
There was historically before 2019 there was a $1 tax.
Okay.
It went from $1 to $2.50.
Okay.
So it went up by $1.
What other industries did we raise? I mean, what other industries are required to pay this additional fee to go to landfills? I mean, are we going to have other industries come into this committee later on and say, hey, you roll back recyclers, let's roll back mine. You know how that works up here. So I'm just wondering what other we might be facing asking for that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. That's a very good question. I'm not sure we can estimate which industries will come and ask for that. I'll say that I think Chair Lady Dempsey mentioned this. There are 2 that are still at the dollar now: it's construction materials, construction recycling, and then also inert waste. This is just one. So I think those are the only 2 that are currently at the dollar. Everything else moved up to $2.50. But as far as other industries that are coming, I certainly don't know the answer to that. This was kind of just a side effect from that raise from our standpoint, and because this is such an important piece of the cycle as far as the environment, et cetera, for recycling. That's why we're here talking about this.
I don't. Chairman Dempsey, could we get a list of other industries that fall under this requirement of this extra fee, just so we're aware of the big picture? First, I really knew of this. So yes, sir.
Sir,
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
May I? I don't believe there's other industries that are as big. So because we recycle so much, the numbers are so big. That's why it's so punitive financially to us. Whereas there may be other industries that it's not as financially punitive to. Because I think you would, if you looked at all of the different waste streams that go into a landfill, besides like sewage remnants from water treatment plants, we're the biggest volume that there is.
Okay.
So
I'm very supportive of the industry, very supportive of recycling. I've got a neighbor who used to be in the wrecker business, and he collected a lot of vehicles that I'm so glad when he got it recycled and hauled off the other year. And so any incentive we can do more automobile recycling when it's appropriate, I'm very supportive of.
All right, thanks, Chairman Dickey. Next, we've got Representative Buckner.
Thank you. You've brought us a puzzle because we want to help both sides, and we worked really hard for the counties to be able to get the increase that they needed so much to take care of the landfills and the issues around that. So it's a conundrum for me personally, because I really do want to support recycling anywhere and anyhow that any way that I can. Would you repeat for me? You said something about that it costs the industry about $1 million a year for this fee
Yes, ma'am.
at the 250 rate.
No, ma'am.
Okay, tell me what you said.
My back of the napkin calculations and trying to compute how many tons I believe shredder residue go into Georgia landfills. In doing the math, I come up with about 630,000 tons per year.
Okay.
And so I multiplied 630,000 tons times the increase, the extra $1.50s. And $1.50 times 630,000 is a little under $1 million. So I think total, if you did the other dollar that's always been there, then it would be more like it costs our industry $1.6 million a year. So we went from 600,000-ish to 1.6 billion. So it's an incremental $1 million.
Okay. And so the amount that goes into the landfill is looking at this pie chart, looks like it's a very small percentage compared to what you recycle. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. For rule of thumb, so at one of our plants, we're bringing in the full gamut, everything from bicycles to cars to everything that's metal that it's in the end of its life. Some things don't have any non-metallics on them, like maybe like a lawnmower. Probably just metal, it's just metal. So it's not gonna have a bunch of this.
Right.
Cars are probably the worst because they have a lot of foam and insulation and tires and glass. So if you looked at the total inbound that we bring in and that we shred every single day, about 25% of what we bring in goes back out to the landfill, about that number.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, Representative Buckner. Representative Davis.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you so much for your presentation. My question is, you went from $2.50 to $1. Is that?
We went from $1 up to $2.50 in 2019, and we're asking to go back down to $1.
Can you tell me what effect that may have on the different municipal landfills or the people who are collecting this money now? Have you looked into that?
Thank you for the question. As it relates to this only applies to those facilities that are run by private organizations. So a county will partner with a private company to run the landfill. This only applies to that. As far as the impact, I'm not sure we can answer that. I know there's a gentleman here from the County Commissioners Association that can probably address that. But as far as the impact on them, I'm not sure I know the answer to that, Representative Davis. I do want to point out one other thing. There's an additional fee that the operators can charge of 75 cents, and that is kind of broken down. 2% can go to the operator, and other portion of that goes to the state. That is not impacted by this at all. I just want to make sure, Mr. Chairman, to clarify that. But so that kind of fits in with your question a little bit, but I think I might defer to the counties on that as it relates to the actual impact on them financially, if that's okay with you, Representative.
Okay, a follow-up, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Then when you were saying that a certain amount, about 30% would go into the landfills, I know that we have a county landfill, and you said this doesn't affect them, correct?
Yes, ma'am. All of our material, the vast majority of our material goes to the Republic Waste Landfill in Beaufort, and so in Gwinnett County. That's because of proximity to where our main plant is. So that's where most of our material goes, into Gwinnett County.
Well, I guess the thing that I'm worried about is a number of the homeowners have had to increase since the EPA and EPD, because we're in DeKalb County under consent decree. Certain people have to do certain upgrades in the infrastructure of their landfills with liners and so forth. So in order to finance that, they charge these fees, and then also when they don't get enough money to do that infrastructure upgrade, they come to the homeowners, and we've had to have increases on our fees for garbage disposal and water, sewer, and so forth. I'm a little nervous about dropping it to that degree without knowing what are the risks of dropping it when you have 9 industries that are doing this right now. But this would affect the entire state, am I correct?
Yes, when you say 9 industries, were you
I mean,
talking
you
about-
say you have 9.
There's 9
business-
shredding plants.
Shredding plants,
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry.
There's 9 different shredders. There's 5 of them around Metro Atlanta. There's one in Cartersville. There's one in Pembroke. There's one in Metter. There's one up in Toccoa. So they're kind of spread. There's one in I said Cartersville already. And so, to follow up on your question and your concern, I certainly respect your concerns. We only go to private landfill. We don't go to any county, so no money would be going away from being able to do infrastructure type work. Can't imagine it affecting your community in DeKalb. This is just about Gwinnett and Republic Services. It's a private landfill company, and that's where all of our stuff goes. We don't send any municipal landfills.
Okay, thank you, Representative Davis. Representative Gamble.
Thank you, Chairman. Appreciate the testimony today. I'm just more of a technical question. House Bill 792, that was the Supplemental Budget Appropriations Act, and that term, is that where the language to make this change was at, or was this in a standalone bill initially?
Representative Gamble, I believe it was a standalone bill in 2019 that I believe, and Chair Lady Smith can probably correct me on this, I think it was sponsored by Representative Terry Rogers, I believe, from a few years ago.
It's not. Okay. What's this, 792 right here? So, anyway.
Okay, is that all, Representative Gamble?
Yes, thank you.
Representative Perkle.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over here to the corner. So I kind of learned a lot as I was trying to listen, and I jotted down a few notes. So let me make sure I have it right. So when you go to dispose of ferrous material, non-ferrous material, whenever you're looking at going to a landfill, your desire is to separate the metals from the non-metals. You get paid a little bit more for these metals over here. You've got another revenue stream for these. But when you take and you have recycled down to it is no more recyclable. This is as far as we can go. We've broke it up to all the things that work for other things. And this was what the last of the last that will go to the landfill. And you pull up to the landfill, and there is a fee, a tipping fee, whatever it is, $10, $20, whatever it is, per truck or per load or per volume or whatever it is that they have. But in addition to that, we imposed a few years ago where it says the host local government is authorized and required to impose a surcharge. So over and above what they have as their tipping fee or landfill fee or whatever fee that it is, we said, hey, you also have to impose another $2.50. And so this doesn't impact, is this not true? This current bill does not impact what the locals say they're going to charge you for the last of the last stuff. Nor does it say you can't impose another fee on top of whatever it is we agreed to. But we're saying of the last, let's not make this fee over $1 per ton for, and it appears to me, so as an economist and farmer, I think the incentives are where we want behavior to follow. And if it is our desire that we have more recycling than less, if it is our desire that we can use these resources in a more efficient manner than less, it appears to me if we could find a way, and perhaps this is it, that we can incent more recycling rather than creating additional barriers, that might be the avenue we need to look at. Is that not true?
Completely agree. Yes,
Thank
sir.
you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Drenner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a kind of a quick question. How does EPA classify this shredder residue?
It is called shredder residue.
Is it a hazardous waste?
No, ma'am. No, ma'am.
Because you said that it needed to go to a lined landfill.
It is a special waste. It's not a hazardous waste. It has the potential, if people don't do a good job in their environmental processes, it could be dangerous. For example, when we bring in a car, before we shred it, we remove the battery, the catalytic converter, the oil, the gasoline, the antifreeze, the brake fluids, the mercury switches. What else?
Transmission fluid.
Transmission fluid. Basically, all the. Thank you. The CFCs out of the air conditioning system. So we depollute the car prior to it being shredded. If somebody didn't do as a good of a job, let's say a battery got left in the car and it got shredded, that battery would turn into a million pieces, would end up, because lead in a battery is not magnetic, it would end up in the residue. So we have a responsibility to the landfills that we go to, Republic Services, where we have to do environmental testing of our shredder residue by an independent lab every quarter, and we have to submit those results to them. And so we have to be below certain levels from a lead point of view, from a cadmium point of view, from a oil point of view, all of those things. So and if we don't pass, we don't have a place to take this byproduct. So it's regulated, but it's not a hazardous waste. Hope that answered your question.
It did. Kind of follow up.
Yes, ma'am.
So are there any other special categorizations of waste that to follow up on Chairman Dickey's point, that will be coming to us next to ask to reduce the fee? Do you know?
Thank you for the question. I don't know, but I believe because we're the biggest source of waste going into landfills, because we recycle so much, millions and millions of pounds every year, we're here because it is financially punitive to us. I believe that other industries may find that, yes, it was an extra cost, but it may not be, and of course I can't decide for them, but I don't know who else it might be, because the inert and the C&D people were left out. If the C&D people, this is like the big C&D recycling just south of the airport, John D. and Metro Green, all these companies, they recycle rocks, stones, cement, timber. That's another big item, and they have byproducts that they can't recycle that go to landfill. They were left out of this. So we left the inert people, or not we. Congress left, or the legislator left the inert people and the C&D recyclers out. Those are two huge groups that send stuff to the landfill. And if they were in here, well, if they were here, that probably would have never happened in 2019. Probably never would have gone up.
As an inert waste or a C&D waste. Your waste is special and has to go to a specially lined landfill. Correct?
So in previous years, and in other states, shredder residue can go to C&D landfills and inert landfills. In the state of Georgia, it cannot. We used to ship to C&D landfills here by the airport 10 or 15 years ago. New EPA regulations, because of the potential for somebody who's not doing their job, they call it a special waste. So it's not a hazardous waste, but it's not normal MSW. It's not municipal solid waste that comes from houses and small businesses. It's a special waste. So it's an in-between category between just municipal solid waste and hazardous waste.
Last comment. So this waste has to go through special testing before it is released. I just want the committee to realize that this TCLP testing has to be done.
Okay, thank you, Representative Drenner. And we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to let somebody from ACCG, Mr. Todd Edwards, come up, so you may have questions then. Madam Chairman.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for bringing this issue to us. I see a slight tutorial coming from Environmental Protection Division, because every year we've had legislation to deal with this. But my question goes to you to understand the cost in your financial structure of the product. Do you receive all of it? Do you pay anything up? Does somebody pay you to take their abandoned car? I mean, where are your revenue points and your revenue loss in your process?
We are a reverse commodity, meaning that we pay for scrap metal because the inherent value of metal, the value of metal is great enough to overcome the costs of disposal. So when we buy a car is probably worth 10 cents a pound-ish right now. So it's not something we charge people. We don't charge people for the non-metallic portion that they're sending to us. If somebody came to us and said, I've got a bunch of tires is not a good example. I've got a bunch of some kind of plastic or some rubber thing that's maybe got 10% steel on it. I've seen these before in heavy equipment. Sometimes, if you think about, military. So the DRMO, the group that sells the surplus stuff for the military. If you had tank tracks, if you think about a tank track, they have rubber tank tracks, but they're bound together with steel. Those things are probably 60% rubber or 70% rubber and only 20 or 30% steel. We would not buy those because there's not enough value there, because to shred something, it's very expensive to shred, to handle it, to transportation costs do nothing but go up. So if it doesn't have enough metal there, it doesn't end up getting recycled. So that's the economic portion, which is why this matters. It's a lot of money to our industry.
So you essentially purchase your raw product is what you do.
Yes, ma'am.
I was just wondering if that's the cost center where you could increase or decrease what you pay.
We do purchase our raw materials. We shred them. We sell the resultant steel nuggets to steel mills.
Okay.
There's our only steel mill here in the state is up in Cartersville, Gerdau.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Okay, now at this time, why don't we have y'all take a break? We'll have Mr. Todd Edwards come up and speak to us from ACCG. If you're fine to work there, yes, sir.
Or would you prefer me there?
No, either way you want, wherever you're most comfortable, Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. It's a pleasure being here with you today, and somewhat of a flashback. I've been here for 20 years, but I started my career at ACCG while I was working on solid waste water issues in front of this committee, so it's great to be back with you. Again, I'm Todd Edwards. I'm with the Association County Commissioners of Georgia. There were a lot of questions of the origins of the fee increase, and I'll address those up front. The legislation in 2018 was House Bill 792, and that was by Representative Terry Rogers. It started out as legislation to renew the tipping fee for the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. At some point in the process, it got married with a legislation that the Senate was working on, which brought in the increase in the host fee. So what it did was increase the host fee from $1 to $2.50. Y'all have gone over that per ton. This is important, of waste going into privately owned landfills. Now that $1 fee had been set since 1992. So we had been working, obviously at ACCG with others for several years, over 10, 20 so years, even more, to try to get that increase. So that had been since 1992. That was the increase. The host fee only applies of solid waste going into a municipal solid waste landfill. So we certainly appreciate the recycling efforts, what they sell for scrap, et cetera, and they stated at the speakers before me very thoroughly that this only applies to the waste going into a municipal solid waste landfill. They were correct, and this does not apply to inert waste, construction, or demolition waste landfills. That fee remained at $1 per ton. What do local governments do with this fee? Under state law, 50% of this money has to be spent by the local government to offset the impact of the facility on public education efforts, cost of solid waste management, the repair or damage to roads, groundwater, air monitoring systems and protections, remediation and monitoring of closed landfills, and there's a couple of other purposes. So by law, 50% of that fee that goes to local governments are used for those efforts. ACCG applauds recycling efforts. We've been very instrumental over the years with certain groups represented or present in this room. At the county level, a lot of the local affiliates on Keep Georgia Beautiful, et cetera. We commend it. Again, we understand there are impacts of everyone. There's impacts on local governments from the solid waste and landfills. There's impacts of a raised fee on the material that goes into there that can be passed through to the customers. We're saying nothing against that. We do have concerns and would oppose to reducing this fee from the current $2.50 back to $1, primarily because the precedent would set. I'm sure that every other group, and I'm sure that, that they would follow if you do it for one, asking for the decrease in the fee has a very legitimate reason to cut costs by having that fee reduced to $1. We feel that by passing this legislation, it would set that precedent, and we would see others follow and do away with all the hard work we had back in 2018-19 to increase that fee that had not been increased since 1992. I'll be happy to answer any questions. I appreciate y'all's consideration. I have more, but in the interest of time, I know there have been a lot of questions on here, and I'll see if I can provide any background, the limited background that I have. And I think it was asked earlier, what other industries would this apply to? Anyone depositing waste in a privately owned solid waste landfill, and that does include local governments. Let's just take for an example the sludge that comes from wastewater treatment. There's residues from a lot of materials that we can't put back into the water. It goes into landfills, has to be a lined landfill. So we would pay it too in those cases where it would go into these landfills. And so any industry that deposits or uses the solid waste or municipal landfills, and that is on top. There's a 75-cent state tipping fee that we use for the Hazardous Waste Trust Fund. There's the tipping fee charged by the landfill itself, whatever they charge to bring it in. So I just wanted to try to clarify that. I believe that question was asked earlier as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. You're going to have a question or two here. Representative Davis.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman. Excuse me. My question is, does there exist a middle ground? Instead of going all the way down to $1, because there's additional cost to doing business, period. Would you consider $1.50 or some other amount? Has anybody even talked about that.
I believe that discussion took place when they were raising it from 1 to 250, taking an inflation since 92. I think that was the compromise reached at that point. Obviously, we like it there. There are some that would want it to be higher. There's some, obviously, that are impacted that would want it to be lower. We feel that's an appropriate middle ground, which had been reached at that time and remains so today.
Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Any more questions for Mr. Edwards? Okay, we've had a hearing only. I think we've had a pretty good discussion, had a lot of questions. Appreciate everybody's presentation. I think maybe we'll let this soak in. Everybody think about what's been asked. You may come up with something different, and at a time in the near future, we will call another meeting and have another little conversation, if that's all right with everybody. Anything else before we adjourn? Hope everybody has a great weekend, safe travels going home, and we'll see y'all Monday. Thank you very much.